My path to life as a social entrepreneur has been a relatively unusual one. Like Ike said, I had a wonderful and very sheltered experience as a child in the university campus, where getting a PhD was probably one of the things that my parents prayed that we would have. Academics and integrity were the bedrock of the childhood that we had. But two personal traits stood out for me when I reflect on my childhood. The first one is that I'm a middle child. I have two older sisters who are simply amazing, who could do no wrong, and two younger siblings who are adorable. And so I was a freedom fighter from a very young age, always looking for why I was being mistreated, who was siding with who, and how I could have my voice heard in a family of 5. The second thing that actually stood out for me is that I had a very hot temper. And some of you who know me now wonder, wow, how could she have a hot temper? My mother actually said that I would end up in jail by 15 if I didn't sort out my hot temper. And in all honesty, that stood by me, that issue of anger and how you deal with anger, and a sense of purpose. From 2 years later, my anger resurfaced again on a spring break trip with my husband's MBA class in Guatemala. I was looking through the window and I was like, this is supposed to be one of the poorest Latin American countries, but there are no potholes, no police checkpoints, they haven't taken the lights. I was wondering what was going on, and I came up with 4 words that I thought were missing in the African context: leadership, effectiveness, accountability, and professionalism. And that's what LEAP stands for. So this journey to start LEAP was really propelled by the conviction that Africa desperately needed a new generation of visionary leaders who would transform our continent. Leaders who were creative, ethical, disciplined, and credible.
Got to America, I did criminal justice for 2 years. Ladies and gentlemen, when I tell you I was making failure a thing of beauty, I was failing so badly, I was on academic probation. For those of you who don't know what AP means in school in America, that means the next time you fail, sister, your behind and your clothes is leaving this university because you are a failure. So I was about to be out of school because I was failing woefully. But it was a beautiful thing to me. I thought to myself, what am I going to do now with my time? I said, let me change my major. To what though? I said, I think I have a knack for languages. My 4th year and I failed, and I told my dad, I said, you know what, Daddy, I'm going back to school and I'm going to face it again. I'll repeat year 4. He looked at me and said, get out of my sight. And then I decided, well, I didn't decide. I think one day while I was in my house, lying down on my bed at about 3 o'clock in the morning, when normal people were sleeping, I normally don't sleep. I'm just quite an insomniac. And I do these voices and characters all the time, tape them on my phone and then send them to my friends. My friends who love me so much, they laugh at my stuff and then they delete. Yeah, that's what true friends do. So I did this voice, this character, and I called her Chego. Someone say Chego. Yes, I explained to you. So I sent it off to a friend of mine who took that and sent it off to somebody else, and somebody else sent it off to somebody else. And next thing you know, I received it back from the US saying, Shoma, have you heard this girl? Her name is Chego. She's so local, she's so ras, but she's just funny as hell. And I was like, hey, yeah, she's really funny. My sister, my brother, they had heard these things. My sister, I saw her BlackBerry DP, and it said, I have wonderful siblings, but Shoma, why? Apparently she had heard it, and she was very embarrassed. She didn't want to tell anyone she knew who I was. So, okay, yeah. So this is the character Chego.
I got born again pretty early. I became a Christian at 11. And so I started the quest for finding out why. I knew I was born for a reason, and I just didn't know what was different about me or what was unique about me, and I wanted to find out why I was here. And so I was a late bloomer. By the time everyone else was going into university, they knew exactly what they wanted to do. I had no clue. I was always confused. I would want to be a doctor today and then a lawyer tomorrow. But I guess it kept me praying and asking, maybe earlier than most of my peers, to find out why am I here, what are my unique gifts and talents. And I guess maybe those prayers have paid off. So it all started with a broken dream. My dream after university was to go to America. You know how every Nigerian child in the 90s, you finish school and then you go to Wonderland. Wonderland was America. It didn't matter what you were going to study. Every child that grew up in the 90s had that dream, at least that I knew. You went to school and things went very well for you if after secondary school you got to go to university in America. And I know God broke that dream apart because yes, he wanted me to have a very global life, but he didn't want it to start off with me not knowing who I was. Because I picked up a camera only to photograph the hairstyles that I did. But I made really great photographs. And then somebody introduced me to your father-in-law and about this older photographer who made these beautiful images. And I was drawn to that because remember I was a hairstylist and I made hair. And then I saw a picture of a friend of mine and the photo was way more beautiful than how she looked. And I felt, I need to know how to do this. And hence my love for photography began. And all at the same time as the music came.
And seeing how women responded to having their makeup properly done, it excited me as much as it excited the women. And when I eventually got into university, my friends would say to me, why don't you please help me to apply my makeup? And that was where the interest to do this thing, this makeup of a thing, and then it just grew from there into what today has become what I consider to be a very big business, you know, and an entire industry as a whole in Nigeria today. I'll tell you what it is, but I can tell you there's a difference. And I'm curious to know what it is. And I said to her, the beauty is the platform for us to empower lives and more focused on impact than anything else. It may not seem that profitable to you because you're looking at money and numbers, right? But I'm looking at lives that are being changed and transformed. The joy of going to the airport, bumping into someone's mother who says, my daughter became so confident because she found something she likes to do and she didn't know she could until she came to your makeup school or where she became a beauty representative for your product line and we focus on developing and training people. That feeling that I get, the sense of fulfillment, is not something that money can buy. You know, and I think that strategy to impact lives, to focus more on building people is, I think, to a large extent, our success.
I will always remember the first time I met the girl in the blue uniform. I was 8 at the time, living in the village with my grandmother, who was raising me and other children. Famine had hit my country of Zimbabwe, and we just didn't have enough to eat. We were hungry. And that's when the girl in the blue uniform came to my village with the United Nations to feed the children. As she handed me my porridge, I asked her why she was there. And without hesitation, she said, as Africans, we must uplift all the people of Africa. I had absolutely no idea what she meant. But her words stuck with me. 2 years later, famine hit my country for the second time. My grandmother had no choice but to send me to the city to live with an aunt I had never met before. So at the age of 10, I found myself in school for the very first time. And there at this city school, I would experience what it was to be unequal. You see, in the village, we're all equal. But in the eyes and the minds of the other kids, I was not their equal. I couldn't speak English. And I was way behind in terms of reading and writing. But this feeling of inequality would get even more complex. Every school holiday spent back in the village with my grandmother made me consciously aware of the inequalities this incredible opportunity had created within my own family. Months ago, under the visionary leadership of Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, head of UN Women, we launched a groundbreaking initiative called He for She, inviting men and boys from around the world to stand in solidarity with each other and with women to create a shared vision for gender equality. This is an invitation for those who believe in equality for women and men, and those who don't yet know that they believe. The initiative is based on a simple idea that what we share is much more powerful than what divides us. We all feel the same things. We all want the same things, even when those things sometimes remain unspoken. He for She is about uplifting all of us, women and men, together. It's moving us towards an inflection point for gender equality.
It started for me officially, I would say, about 10 years ago. But I would say that it's been a much, much longer journey than that. Now, I was born in England. I was born at a place called Hammersmith Hospital. Went back to Nigeria at age 7, came back to the UK at age 11. But between age 0 and 7 and 11 to whenever it was that I spent the rest of my life here before I went back as a married woman, you find that you do get asked really interesting questions by non-Africans. You know, they will ask you if you live in a hut. They will ask you if you live under a bridge. They will ask you if you speak African, but there is no such language as African. Africa is a continent with millions of different languages. And I found that my children, years and years later, came back to the United Kingdom, to school. My son went to Harrow, my daughter went to Malvern, and they were being asked similar questions 20 or 30 years later. I was really afraid, because I was working in ExxonMobil as head of human resources, to say that it was time to take the plunge and put aside administrative work and really start to tell this journey, start this journey of telling the African story. I have no media experience up until that point. I'd never been trained in media. So the first thing I did was to obviously go on a training course and learn how to speak hello and good morning or good afternoon and welcome to Moments with Mo and whatever it is that one has to say. So for me, the journey started pretty much from those sort of baby steps to getting out there and sharing the story. So yes, it did become a commercial venture, because I think sometimes when you're filling a gap that is so needed, then you find the commerce of that business starts to make absolute sense to what it is that you're doing.
Trust your struggle. This is something I'd heard a lot. Trust your struggle. And that means no matter what the hardships are you're going through in life, have faith that it will all end up being for the greater good. So I mentioned that 4.5 years ago, I was working as a receptionist, and I was in a production company in California. And I was a receptionist, so I really wanted to sort of move up within the company. And no matter how hard I worked, I couldn't get promoted. No matter how many times I stayed late or came in on the weekends, hoping that my boss would notice me and promote me, it never happened. And in fact, for the position I wanted, they began looking for external candidates. I'm sure anyone who's been through that knows how that can be. And because I was the receptionist, it was my job to serve water to the people who were coming in to interview for the job that I wanted. I know, it wasn't easy. And so I didn't really necessarily feel good about myself because of that, and I did some soul searching, and I asked myself, okay, well, what do you really want to do in life? Because clearly this is probably not meant for you. What do you really want to do? And I'd always been passionate about broadcast journalism. So I called a television station in New York, a local news station, and I asked them, what do I need to do to get a job with you guys? So unfortunately, I didn't have any experience. They needed about 2 or 3 years previous experience as a reporter, and the only experience I really had was answering phones and sending faxes. That's all I really knew how to do. And so they said no repeatedly to me, and on top of that, I had a British accent. And in America, if you want to get into the local news business, it's very difficult if you have a foreign accent. It's a lot easier in national news, but certainly in local news, it's a lot harder. So they said no, and I decided I wasn't going to take no for an answer, so I basically called in sick to work, and I paid my roommate, my housemate, a few $100s, whatever, and and they helped me, they helped film me around Los Angeles, sort of acting like a reporter. I studied reporters inside out. I studied everything that they did inside out. And I put together various packages, which is sort of voiced over pieces that I learnt basically from studying various reporters. And I sent it to this news station, hoping that they would give me a chance. Unfortunately, a lot of these news stations receive thousands of applications, thousands of tapes, so it took them several months to get back to me. And during that time, the recession kicked in and I lost my job. So there I was, no money, no job. So I decided anyway that I was going to move to New York and just hope that this one station would get back to me. So eventually, after emailing and pestering constantly, they eventually got back to me. They brought me in for an interview, and they were so impressed that even though I had no experience, that I'd put together this tape by myself, showing what I could do, that they hired me on the spot. So, thank you. So that's why I say trust your struggle.
There have been before I got Orange is the New Black, I had given up. That was actually the very first time in my life where I had 100% committed myself to crossing over to the other side of something. I think previous to that, there had been, stops in the road where I had debated, considered, thought about, but never had fully committed to quitting. Previous to actually quitting, I think it was honestly the support that I had around me, of starting first with my mother, who has been a champion of mine my entire life, and easily the greatest example I've ever had to look to for what can be produced out of hard work, or what can be produced out of that. And that's just the sheer commitment and the focus and the discipline of applying yourself towards something. My family, for those of you that don't know, my family, I'm from Nigeria. Nigeria in the building? Yes, no way! Really? We're coming back to that. Really? Yeah, see? I know, yes. Nigeria, that makes me so happy. And I'm gonna take it back home. My family's from Nigeria, and my mom and my family had come to this country post Biafran Civil War, and really with only one dream. My mom's dream, she said, my entire life really was for myself and my siblings. My parents wanted, their American dream was for us to be able to live our own dream. That was really kind of the simple base for it. And what I got my entire life, the greatest lesson that I was ever given, was that through hard work, anything can be accomplished. My mom always saying, I don't know, I've never heard of nothing coming from hard work. There's no such thing. There just doesn't exist. We know that. It's a fact that was laid into me day in, day out by example. So I carried that with me to New York.
See, I was born in one country and raised in the other. When we moved to Botswana, I was a toddler who spoke fluent Siswati and nothing else. So I was being introduced to my new home, my new cultural identity, as a complete outsider, incapable of comprehending anything that was being said to me by the family and country whose traditions I was meant to move forward. But very soon, I would shed Siswati, and when I would go back to Swaziland, I would be constantly confronted by how very non-Swazi I was becoming. Add to that, my entry into Africa's private school system, whose entire purpose is to beat the Africanness out of you, and I would have a very peculiar adolescence. But I think that my interest in ideas of identity was born here, in the strange intersection of belonging to two places at once, but not really belonging to either one very well, and belonging to this vast space in between and around simultaneously. I became obsessed with the idea of a shared African identity. Began with one question. If Africa was a bar, what would your country be drinking or doing? I kicked it off with a guess about South Africa, which wasn't exactly according to the rules because South Africa is not my country. but alluding to the country's continual attempts to build a post-racial society after being ravaged by decades by apartheid, I tweeted, "If Africa was a bar, South Africa would be drinking all kinds of alcohol and begging them to get along in its stomach." And then I waited. Then I had that funny feeling where I wondered if I crossed the line, so I sent out a few other tweets about my own country and a few other African countries I'm familiar with. And then I waited again, but this time I read through almost every tweet I had ever tweeted to convince myself, no, to remind myself that I'm really funny and that if nobody gets it, that's fine. But luckily, I didn't have to do that for very long. Very soon, people were participating. In fact, by the end of that week in July, the hashtag "If Africa Was a Bar" would have garnered around 60,000 tweets, lit up the continent, and made its way to publications all over the world. People were using the hashtag to do many different things. To poke fun at their stereotypes, to criticize government spending, to make light of geopolitical tensions, to remind us that even in Africa, there's some countries we don't know exist, and also to make fun of the countries that don't think that they're in Africa. My dream is that young Africans stop allowing borders and circumstance to suffocate our innovation. My dream is that when a young African comes up with something brilliant, they don't say, well, this wouldn't work in my country, and then give up. My dream is that young Africans begin to realize that the entire continent is our canvas, is our home.
I love to take challenges and, go the extra mile and try to see to its logical conclusion. Last time I went to see the minister, before that minister was changed, he then said to me that, okay, you've come with all these ideas, but you know what this government wants? This government wants Nigerians to be involved in Nigeria's exploration and production. That so far up till then, that it has been multinationals that had been taking advantage,
reaping the benefits,
that had been taking advantage of the oil industry in Nigeria. So they want Nigerians to begin to do that. So I felt, okay, I guess this is saying this is not for the likes of you. Enough. There's no point coming back. I went back with drooped shoulders. But then because I'm not one to take no for an answer, because I love to take challenges and go the extra mile and try to see to its logical conclusion. So it seemed as if that door was shut again.
Three times.
That was 3 times.
Yes.
I didn't give up. I knew that this is a door that I should find a way to get something out of it. And it seemed as if that door was shut. But someone else would have given up because that was what she was told to go and do, and there was nothing coming out of it. They would have walked away. I chose not to walk away. I chose to go back